and then you know you're alive, and you don't have to be afraid of anything, cause you know the truth, and the truth is love, yes it is. Wasn't what they said to you, or anything that you learn from a book or from the news. It's not like that, cause it's a thing. It is something that you do. Doop 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 doo. Doop 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 doo. Doop 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 doo. Dib-on baby did alone. Doop 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 doo. Doop 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 doo.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Bassline, everyone. Dr. Rima Laibow is a pioneer and a bit of a cult icon. She famously appeared on Jesse Ventura's show Conspiracy Theory in 2009 and made predictions that are startlingly relevant to what's happening now. She's been practicing drug-free healthcare for decades and brings not only expertise as a doctor, but also offers profound insights into the plight of the human race. It is with great joy and exuberance that I welcome to the Bassline the one and only Dr. Rima Laibow. However, unfortunately, we have the same problem that we had last week, which is we don't have our guest on the line. I don't know what happened. We had a lot of good luck going for a while. It's kind of amazing how lucky we were. And then we ran into a little bad luck last week, and then our little bad luck streak is continuing here because for some reason we got our wires crossed. Dr. Laibow is not on the line yet. We're going to continue to try to call her and get a hold of her. However, it's actually okay because I don't know if you guys realized, but it was a different show that was uploaded on Monday than the interview or the kind of beginning of an interview that got cut off with Dr. Ben Marble last Friday. We did a interview Sunday night that was then uploaded last Monday morning. So if you didn't hear that, please go to Podbean and check out my interview, my full 1 hour interview with Dr. Ben Marble, because if you tuned in live last week, we tried our best to pull off the interview, but he was in a remote location. And somehow, we just couldn't keep a solid signal. So he tried, he got disconnected. We tried again, he got disconnected. But it's okay because we got to hear from some callers. We got some great calls from some of our stalwarts. And I got to express myself a little bit, which I appreciate the opportunity to do. And then we still had a full-length interview. So it's kind of a best of both worlds type of situation. It's really quite okay. We're ready to improvise like a jazz musician. We're ready to roll with the punches like a boxer. It's really all good. And it actually gives me a time to do some communicating with you, the Bassline stalwarts in the audience, who have been supporting this program, who have been tuning in, who have been sharing the links, who have subscribed to the Substack. All of these various forms of support are really greatly appreciated. I can't tell you guys how much it means to me. I really think this is an important conversation. I think we're doing a good job with this show in terms of we're bringing fascinating guests on the air on a weekly basis, unless there's some strange glitch in the matrix like today. But in any case, this is week 31 of the Bassline. We're thriving, we're striving. And the point of this program is to educate the public. Every week when I invite these guests on to illuminate us all, I'm here, I'm in school myself. I have no idea what they're going to say, and I just sit back and I enjoy the education, and I hope you guys are doing the same. And if you can, please share the links to what we're doing here. You go to Podbean, like black bean or a red bean, but this is P-O-D, bean.com, and look for The Bassline, which, by the way, when you reference this program, it's The Bassline, because I'm a bass player with two S's, B-A-S-S-L-I-N-E. It's not the other way of spelling bassline, but bassline like the bass line of a song. And also, I did just release a new Substack article. It's called Operation Dog Shakes Fleas, Volume 1. I'm not going to go into a lengthy description of what I wrote about. I would just like you to check it out. Jeremiah Hosea Substack, JeremiahHosea is my Substack. And I'm pretty proud of the article. I've gotten some great feedback already, some great comments under the article. Please go and check out the comments under the article as well. It's great to get feedback and great to get insights from readers, things that I'll contribute or that will contribute, I should say, to Volume 2 when I'm ready to produce Volume 2. But there's something really great going on right now in terms of the open source media movement. I want you guys to realize corporate media is dead. It's done with. We don't need it anymore. We can make our own media. Please make your own media and share it. And share the media that you find relevant in terms of independent news programs, in terms of Substacks. You can subscribe to a bunch of Substacks for free and just have an amazing trove of articles appearing in your email on a daily and weekly basis. You can support shows like The Last American Vagabond, like The Jimmy Dore Show, like The Corbett Report, like The Bassline. And this is open source media. Be excited about the new dawn of information that we're in, where, you know what, we don't need the priest to interpret the text anymore. We're going to read right out of the religious text for ourselves. It's akin to that kind of revolution where, you know what, you can make your own news program, turn on your camera and walk right out of your front door and say, this is what's going on in my neighborhood. It's not being filtered through some sort of corporate filter. It doesn't go through an executive board and they decide, well, we don't really want to cover that story because, no, this is unedited. This is what's actually happening, right? That's the new news, is you take your camera and you say, hey, look, this is what's happening on my block. And if I didn't share that with you, you would have never known that this was happening. Like today, the train was stopped, some kind of violent incident on the platform. I don't know what happened. They said, police, we need police in the conductor's car. I don't know what happened. I heard people kind of whispering and talking about it. Wasn't a very clear description, but there's more and more violence in New York City in the subway system. Did you hear they brought in the National Guard to try to secure the New York City subway system? And I find that so silly because sorry, I think we might be getting a word that she's trying to get connected with us. Sorry, let me just send a message here really quick. Maybe we can get her on the air today. That would be great. We'll see. But in any case, I was saying they have the National Guard deployed in the New York City subway system. What's the deal with that? And then they say, after a week of the National Guard being here, there's no improvement in the situation, which makes me say, well, why can't the New York City police secure the city and secure the subways in a more technical manner, in a more precise manner? They're very imprecise. They're very lethargic, I've noticed over many years of living in New York. They're not very tactical. They're not very strategic. They're not very well organized from what I've noticed. So, it's just another example of how there's just so many things being done in an ineffective way. We have an ineffective healthcare system. We have ineffective law enforcement. We have ineffective and counterproductive educational practices in elementary schools all the way through the university level. There's a lot of absurdity that is becoming normal in our society. There's a lot of backwardsness. There's a lot of, I'd say, like a lack of specificity. It's like if you're a logical person, you'll almost stand out. You'll almost stick out like a sore thumb just through exerting logic in some cases. It's really bizarre. Like, one thing I'm noticing is people are getting upset very easily nowadays. Have you guys noticed that, how easily people get upset? And we're just reaching a point where it's like you can't have an adult conversation anymore. Why not? I mean, okay, if someone expresses their opinion and it's different than yours, why does that add or subtract to your life? I mean, can't you go about your good old American business irrespective of someone else's opinion? But you know what? I think we have great news. I think we have Dr. Rima Laibow on the line. Are you with us, Dr. Laibow? I
am, and I apologize. The time change got me.
I hear you. They keep messing with the time, and it's so impractical that they do that. I'm so excited to have you on the air, Dr. Laibow. Thank you for joining us here on the Bassline. This is a medical freedom dedicated radio show, and you are a living legend in your own right, so we're truly honored to have you here.
Thank you.
The founder of the Natural Solutions Foundation, by the way. So, Dr. Laibow, you are a bit of a cult legend in a sense, because you appeared on a 2009 program with Jesse Ventura, and of course your career and everything you've done is so much greater than that. I hate to overemphasize one particular media appearance. However, it's kind of uncanny that in that appearance you alluded to a genocide program by vaccine. You warned us way back then about the weaponizing of vaccines, and then we just had this aggressive power play to inject everybody on the planet and even some zoo animals and other things with experimental gene juice. And I think now there's a great deal of interest in interviewing you, because you were pretty far ahead of the game, and the things you were warning about startlingly and scarily resemble what we're living through right now. Could you tell us what you think is going on? Why did they want to inject everyone on the planet? What's their agenda? What's the deal with that?
Unfortunately, I don't think I know what's going on, Jeremiah. Sadly, I do know what's going on, because if you read the documents of the folks who have spent the last 140 years putting this particular set of events in place carefully with abundant resources and brilliant planning. You have to give them that. They're brilliant. They're evil, but they are brilliant. If you read what they have to say consistently over the years, starting with John D. Rockefeller Sr., back before the turn of the 20th century, what you see is that we're looking at a eugenics/enslavement future. They didn't have the science necessary to bring about the fullness of what they wanted, and so they spent lots of years and billions of dollars, a lot of it our taxpayer dollars, buying that science. So what they want is very simple. It's a 3-tiered pyramid that requires less than 10% of the world's total population. Everyone else is extraneous and, according to their plans, is to be disposed of through the good old Malthusian methods of famine, war, and now we have, of course, the genetic manipulation to kill people through the bioweapon that was created not by Moderna, not by Pfizer, not by Operation Warp Speed, but by the United States Department of Defense. And we have the work of Sasha Latipova and Catherine Watt, among others,
right,
to thank for digging that out. So what they want is very simple. The neo-aristocrats, the special ones at the top. Then around them, their servants and servitors. And then around them, at the bottom, the technicians. This model was shared with me by a woman who was a head of state, who was one of my patients. And she quite cheerily informed me in about 2003, late 2002, early 2003, that it was almost time for the great culling of the useless eaters to begin. This was my first glimpse into the organized, carefully orchestrated plan that they had ahead for us. And I had a great deal of trouble believing it, so I went looking for documentation, hoping I could make what she said go away. And instead, what I found was absolute confirmation that this was indeed the plan. So by the time I spoke to Jesse Ventura, my husband, Major General Albert N. Stubblebine III, and I had already closed our practice of drug-free medicine and created the Natural Solutions Foundation in 2004, and we were going around the world, literally, saying to people, listen up. We have only a few years to stop this. And, of course, people said, that's crazy. And we agreed, yes, it's crazy, but the craziness is in the perpetrators, not in us. And it took almost 20 years for people to begin saying, wait, that's true. Oh, my God, that's what they're doing. But by that time, of course, the other side, the globalists, had moved very fast and very far, and they have woven their strands of evil into each and every one of the aspects of our society, into our education, into our healthcare, into our governance at the municipal level, into our skies, into our agriculture, into our food system, into our communication system, into our censorship restrictions, into absolutely everything. And they don't want us to know what they're doing, and they certainly don't want us to tell what they're doing. My husband was assassinated along the road for being a brilliant and very articulate leader in this, and there have been a number of serious attempts on my life, which tells us that we're right over the target. What they want is most of us dead and the rest of us enslaved as part of the Internet of Things, and the shots and the shedding of the materials, the self-contaminating shedding of the materials in the shots is a large part of their control mechanism, using 5G pulse microwave systems to communicate with the self-assembling nanotechnology that used to sound like the maddest of madness, and now we know is actually in our bodies because of this evil inoculation program. It's all about subduing, subjugating, and destroying the genetic entity known as humanity. It's all about subjugating, subduing, and destroying the spiritual entity known as humanity, and making those of us who are allowed to survive nothing but subhuman slaves. They say that. This is not my supposition. Listen to Yuval Harari, who says people are extraneous and people have no rights. Yuval Harari, the sidekick of the completely demented, batshit crazy Klaus Schwab, says quite confidently, human rights do not exist. They are a fairy tale we tell ourselves. If you cut open a body, you find kidneys, you find a spleen, you find a heart, you find a liver, but you do not find rights, and therefore they do not exist, meaning that only that which can be felt and weighed and dissected is real, which of course is complete nonsense. It's bonkers. But these people are bonkers. And so we've given them control of our lives, our governance, our everything, and they've seized that control and woven their net very, very, very tightly. So we have one opportunity, Jeremiah, one. The last opportunity I believe that humanity will ever have, if we don't succeed, to reclaim our birthright and to push these monsters out of our houses, off our doorsteps, and out of positions of power, and that is to get our countries out of the United Nations. 2 years ago, I believed that we would have enough time to first get out of WHO, untangle ourselves from the international health regulations, which, by the way, have been legally binding since they were initiated. And then the next step would be to get out of the United Nations. Well, I was wrong. They are moving so fast. They are moving so aggressively for the destruction of property rights, parental rights, every kind of right that we ever thought was inalienable, that unless we get our countries out of the entire death machine, and that's what it is. It was set up to be a death machine. The World Health Organization was created by the Rockefellers to do exactly what it's doing now, to be a medical global tyranny. And the United Nations was set up by when I say the Rockefellers, I mean the Rockefellers and their predatory philanthropist buddies. There are lots of them. Gates and Soros are just the latest iteration of this wicked group of people who decide that because they have money, they can be literally gods. And they say they want to be gods. And so they have created their rules and their regulations and their structures and their strictures and woven them into everything. So there is now, before the Congress of the United States, a remarkable bill. It is called the Disengaging Entirely from the United Nations Debacle Act. In the Senate, it's Senate 3428. In the House, it's H.R. 6645. These two bills together, and they're identical, require us to get out of the United Nations. And the United States is still so powerful and so impactful that when we leave, there will be a whole bunch of other countries that I'm in contact with, as a matter of fact, that want to do so but don't dare to do it alone, or countries that have to do so because they shelter under the protective wings of the United States internationally. And so there will be an exodus from the United Nations, from all its subsidiary organizations, of which WHO is only one. The International Monetary Fund, the International Financial Structure, UPA, the Food and Agriculture Organization, UNESCO, UNICEF. None of them is good for humanity. Every one of them is good for the destruction of humanity and is already working toward that. So, this act has to be passed by our Congress, whether or not our Congress wants to. And the only way to do that, and by the way, there's a website that I urgently plead with everyone who is within the sound of our voices, Jeremiah, to go to and urge them to take action there. The website is preventgenocide2030.org. Why 2030? Agenda 2030, which used to be Agenda 21, but they fell behind their timeline. Agenda 2030 is the motor, the engine of this destruction. And getting out of WHO, and there are a lot of good people who want to get out of WHO, but that's not the point. Getting out of WHO doesn't do a thing to liberate us from the absolute tyranny of Agenda 2030. Only the UN exit will do that. And so if you go to preventgenocide2030.org, right there on the home page, you can pick up your Freedom Mouse, which you have and which you should be riding hard, folks. You can pick up your Freedom Mouse and you can take action by sending an email and a phone message and a short video, which you can make right on the site, to the legislators who must pass this bill and then pass it by a 2/3 majority so that it can override the inevitable veto that whichever sock puppet happens to be sitting in the Oval Office will give it. Whether it's Biden or Harris doesn't make any difference. They are sock puppets all.
Right.
And people say to me, but you can't change the mind of Congress. They're all corrupt. They're all controlled. Absolutely. But what we can do, and I know this from personal experience having done it, Jeremiah, what we can do is force them through massive political will to realize that if they don't do what we want on this issue, they'll lose control of the control. And that's what they are in place to keep. So we are threatening their position, if peacefully, when we raise our voices and say, do this and do it now. But it has to be done with a two-thirds majority. And people say, well, why not next Congress? Why not the Congress after? And the answer is because we have run out of gradualism. It used to be that you would work on something over a span of many years, and you would introduce it and get a little more support, and then reintroduce it again, get a little more support. The other side is moving so quickly to destroy everything that we own, that we are, that we think we have, that we believe in, that if we do not pass this during this 118th Congress, we will never again have the opportunity to effectively exit from the death system. It is a do or die, a do or be killed, a do or be exterminated moment. And it's very, very frustrating for me, Jeremiah, for me to say this to people and know that I'm just as correct as I was when I spoke to Jesse Ventura in 2009, and have people say, yeah, well, it can't be that bad. It is that bad.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Dr. Laibow. I'm a soldier for your cause at this point. I'm very concerned about what you're saying. I think you are at the forefront of being outspoken about this very serious situation that we're facing. And I would like you, actually, I have several more questions for you. I mean, I have more things that I would like to ask and we'll be able to address in the remaining half hour. But I would like to make it a point for you right now, and hopefully we'll get a chance to repeat this information. But in addition to the website you mentioned, can you kind of direct people to your Substack, direct people to your natural wellness organization? Because I want everyone to understand, guys, this is not just an entertainment program to sit back and be entertained. This is a proactive program. Dr. Laibow is available to educate us, but we have to support these outspoken individuals such as Dr. Laibow. So please listen carefully. I hope you have your pencil or you have your cell phone handy. Dr. Laibow, how can people follow you on Substack, etc.?
Thank you so much. Dr. Rima truthreports.substack.com. It's a relatively new Substack, and I think that it's a really important way for people to interact with these ideas. I read every comment and I respond personally to most of them because it is a very, very useful interactive medium, and I want to know what you think and interact with your observations and questions. And I'm speaking to anybody who's out there. So it's Dr. Rima, D-R-R-I-M-A, truthreports.substack.com. And as long as you've made note of that name, I have a podcast called Dr. Rima Truth Reports. And it airs live and is live streamed on Rumble on the People for People, F-O-R, people.ning.com, peopleforpeople.ning.com platform, airs live Tuesdays from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, and it also goes up on the People for People Rumble and Brighteon and so forth, and I put it up on my Rumble, Dr. Rima Truth Reports, not surprisingly. But wait, there's more. I have another podcast, also on peopleforpeople.ning.com. And by the way, there's a free membership required to participate in the chat live at peopleforpeople.ning.com, because being a private association, that's the .ning.com part, takes it outside of the European censorship laws. So in order for it to be a completely uncensored platform, it needs to be that, peopleforpeople.ning.com. The second podcast is called Catalytic Conversations, and we bring people in from all over the world talking about these issues at depth and exploring options and possibilities. These are very detailed, intelligent conversations, and I have two amazing co-hosts who are making this happen with me, Deborah Boehm of Affidavit Mamas and Connie Shields of Unlock Alberta. So the producer of peopleforpeople.ning.com, Gaz, allows us to go on, if we need to, beyond the 2-hour mark, if the conversation is moving forward in a way that's important. And so some of these catalytic conversations are virtually 3 hours long. That's a lot of time. There's a great deal of powerful information there that generally gets glossed over because people are busy, because time is short. So you can always put it on, speed it up, playback, and listen to it that way. This is important. We have to understand the precision and the detail, not just the broad brush of what we're up against, because these people have created laws and regulations and requirements and so on that in order to unwind from, we have to truly understand. And that's what Catalytic Conversations is about.
Excellent. Before we even continue, could you also direct people to Natural Solutions, the Natural Solutions Foundation?
Yes. The Natural Solutions Foundation has a number of different websites. The single most important website that you need to know about, need to visit, and need to share if we're going to save humanity. Those are big statements, but I mean every word of them, Jeremiah, is preventgenocide2030.org.
Okay. We
also have a newsletter that we urge you to sign up for. You can sign up for it on the on preventgenocide2030.org. And we have a news aggregation site called opensourcetruth.com. But the single most important site, here's a statement that many other people will find appalling, Jeremiah. I believe the most important site on the website is preventgenocide2030.org, because it's the only one that actually creates the necessary pushback to get multiple countries out of the United Nations, not WHO. That's trivial compared to the United Nations. Your whole work is about health freedom. Well, there is no freedom if your body is owned, if your genetic matrix is owned, if you are now property of the patent holders.
Right.
And that's how the Internet of Things, the Internet of Bodies works.
Right. Now, Dr. Rima, I would like to ask you in terms of the specific nature of these bioweapons that they've imposed on the global public. I'm very curious. I'm very confused. I'm very in wonder of the nature of this weapon, because we see a wide, I've been told and I've repeated in my own articles, the widest side effects profile of any so-called medication in history. A range of autoimmune disorders, a range of neurological disorders, various injuries to the heart, various injuries to your various organ systems, thrombosis of all kinds. Who's ever heard of something with so many side effects? And then the premise of giving someone a so-called medical intervention where you subject them to 1,291 side effects, including death and including the disease itself that you're trying to prevent. And, and the kicker is the so-called protection you're getting is a quote-unquote window of protection. You don't even have lasting immunity against the thing you're trying to protect yourself against. Who's ever heard of such an injurious product? And to tell people that's safe and effective? If I get thrombosis, that's safe and effective. So my question for you, Dr. Rima, because I asked Dr. Kat Lindley, who mentioned your name yesterday in a positive way, of course. I asked her if it's possible. I'm very curious about your answer to the question of, is it possible for someone to receive something that is potentially so harmful and for it to not have a negative effect on one's health? Is it possible that someone has taken one of these shots and has not shortened their life in doing so?
We don't know. We simply do not know. Remember, first of all, there's a lot of data that we don't have access to. And second of all, there's a lot of data that simply has never been generated. We don't have long-term studies on the health effects of these genetic manipulation tools interacting with pulsed microwave 5G signaling. The human biological organisms have no significant experience with self-assembling nanotechnology introduced into the bloodstream and into tissues. So what I can say to you, and this is of great concern, and in fact I'll tell you about a study that I'm just about to start in order to deal with some of this information that we don't have. What I can tell you is that the difference between acute and subacute damage is really important here. It is possible to have damage that doesn't show up for a while, or maybe for an entire lifespan. Slow-growing cancers don't show up for 20 years. Sometimes they're there, they're growing, but you don't know that you have anything going on until something is impacted, until there's a tipping point, and then a symptom shows up. Biological systems, as you know, are exceedingly complicated and exceedingly redundant. We have lots and lots and lots of ways of compensating for damage that does occur. So something might be happening, but you don't see the impact of it, and you say, I'm fine. There was some Yahoo in Germany who allegedly took 217 COVID shots.
Right, I saw that.
And the paper wonderingly said, the scientific paper that examined him said, look at that. There are no negative effects. Well, first of all, I don't believe that. Right. I think that's a piece of propaganda puffery, also known as science for hire.
Yeah.
But even if it's true, the fact that one guy's immune system is somehow or other robust enough to keep compensating for this assault doesn't mean that these things are safe. We see children dying of heart attacks. In my 54 years since graduation from medical school, I have never seen a child die of a heart attack, a healthy child die of a heart attack who wasn't born with a congenital malformation or some other cardiovascular cataclysm.
This does
not happen. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, the son of LeBron James, possibly the most durable athlete in the history of the NBA, having a heart attack at the age of 17 in a college warm-up.
And, of course, it's anything but the vaccines. We understand that. It's anything but the vaccine. Mark Crispin Miller publishes a Died Suddenly Substack that is brilliant, where it's anything but the vaccine. And, of course, it is the misnamed vaccine. The other thing that we need to understand is that the vials of the kill shot were and are wildly misbranded. Misbranding is a criminal offense, by the way. If you don't put on the label what is actually in the bottle, the vial, the jar, the whatever it is that's being labeled, that's a criminal offense.
Great point.
We know from very, very reputable people who were looking at these vials all over the world, but they have different stuff in them.
Right.
We know that they have different stuff in them. So every vial has to be suspected of being misbranded. We know from websites and beautiful research like How Bad Is My Batch?
Yeah.
That certain batches contain stuff that causes much, much, much more harm than other batches, which don't seem to cause much harm or no harm at all. So we know that we're dealing with a floating crap game of contents and contaminants. And we also know that the mass-produced shots were not what the EUAs, the emergency use authorizations, were given on the basis of, as bad as that was.
Right.
So we've got a chaos of God knows whatism,
Right.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
We've got absolute chaos, and I believe that it must have been done intentionally to make it impossible to lay the death and destruction at the doorstep. The batches were mixed so that you can't tell which batch did what to whom with any real precision. This is and by the way, that's typical with vaccines in general, which are not the standard of health and safety, because fundamentally when you inject pus and poison into people and think that you're ramping up the immune system, what you're doing is generating lifelong customers for the pharmaceutical industry.
Right,
vaccines are evil altogether, and ineffective, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, you may be aware that we are now moving beyond effectiveness. At this point, the novel vaccines are no longer even have to say that they're effective. And let me insert here the fact that in the Immunization Implementation Agenda document from the World Holocaust Organization, misnamed World Health Organization, there is a chart which I have shared with people many times, which announces that by the year 2030, every man, woman, and child on the planet, of course not the guys at the top of the pyramid, but us, will be forced to receive 500 novel vaccines. And think about the dangers and harms that just one has caused, and all of the other vaccines that we're already used to will also be pumped into our bodies.
Wow.
This is genocide.
Yeah, they want us to be human pincushions, everyone.
And the correct word for it, Jeremiah, is iatrogenocide, doctor-delivered
Right.
death.
I referred to iatrogenic injury in my article, You're Not a Doctor, which I encourage everyone to read. And actually, I also want to point out, for those of you who are tuning in and saying, oh, okay, now they're getting into the 5G stuff, that's wacky. Well, think what you will of that, and I'll be honest with you, it's something I'd like to research more. I have not referenced that in my various articles, but when the censorship regime began under COVID and the new COVID era that we were entering into, you couldn't question two things. The vaccines, for one, you were immediately and aggressively censored if you uttered one single questioning word about these novel injections that were falsely marketed as vaccines, but also they censored any discussion of 5G. If you said anything about 5G, they were all over it. So there was a weird parallel from the beginning about vaccines, these novel, quote-unquote, vaccines, and 5G. And also I'll add Yuval Noah Harari, the weirdo, they call him the philosopher priest of the World Economic Forum, who was first sort of brought to public attention by Barack Obama, of all people. They asked him on a television interview, what are you reading? And he said, well, I'm reading a book by this fascinating individual, Yuval Noah Harari. And Harari also said, famously, if you've looked into some of his remarks, he said COVID will be remembered as the time period in which surveillance goes under the skin. And he says it with just devilish delight that somehow surveillance goes under the skin during COVID. And then if you ask, well, what does that mean? And you're automatically labeled a conspiracy theorist, but it's like, but what does that mean though? He said it, and he's a guy who's speaking to multiple world leaders when he gives a speech. So, it might be far out, guys, but yeah, we're getting into some science fiction territory by now. As strange as it is, that's where we are, unfortunately.
There are very, very, very disturbing microscopic documentations, video documentations of self-assembling nanotechnology chips and fibers dissolving when the Wi-Fi system is turned off, reassembling when the when the router is turned back on, dissolving, reassembling, and each time they reassemble, they are more complicated. They have more features and factors. Now, this is irrefutable, and it doesn't come from the microscope of one person. It comes from people in Australia, in Ecuador, in Germany, in the Czech Republic, in the United States, in Canada. Many, many, many people are seeing this phenomenon. Once you see this data, and once it is replicated by laboratories all around the world, then you have to say this must be considered. And the self-assembling nanotechnology, which we have no biological defenses against, unlike the defenses we have against microorganisms and parasites, we have no defenses against a completely novel threat. One of the things that we must take into account is methods to get rid of that. People are very concerned with getting rid of the spike protein with nattokinase and bromelain and turmeric and so on, and that's lovely. Mm-hmm. But it is even more important to get rid of the self-assembling nanotechnology for which we have no mechanisms. Right. And so I have preliminary data that a substance called nanosoma, and I'll tell people where they can get it if they'd like, preliminary data that a substance called nanosoma, which is a polycosanol, a natural plant alcohol, the polycosanol spray, because of the way it's formulated, seems to allow the body to clear the self-assembling nanotechnology. So I will be doing a study with a dark field microscope and with placebo-controlled double-blind materials. People won't know whether they're getting the active ingredient or a placebo. And we will look at the self-assembling nanotechnology after 30 days of treatment with this oral spray. And if people want to get that, they can go to, and I'm not saying it does clear it, I'm saying there's enough preliminary investigation, preliminary data for us to spend the time and effort looking to see whether it works in a wider way. But it's good stuff anyway, and they can go to nsfmarketplace.com, nsfmarketplace.com, and they can look at the Magic Dicol products. And what we're talking about is the spray, the nanosoma oral spray. Right. I think that this is probably the most important research that I can do, which is to disengage the biological system potentially from the 5G control system. A little factoid here, Jeremiah, that you may be aware of or not. Fort McMurray in 2016 was burned to the ground. More than 90% of Fort McMurray, the hub of the Alberta oil production industry in Canada, was burned to the ground. During the month that people were evacuated from their homes and could not return to Fort McMurray, to their homes and stores and factories and schools and so on, what was done to repair the damage to 90% of the city? Nothing much. What was done was that the 5G infrastructure was installed. And it was clearly a DEW attack because trucks melted and trees didn't burn right next to them.
Right.
That's rather interesting. Why is that?
Yeah, clearly not of natural origin.
Unfortunately, as much as I would like to say 5G, viral thing, couldn't possibly, I would love to say that, but it's not. The data doesn't support dismissing it. The data supports saying, this is very, very troublesome.
Right. Now, I'm very curious about something where, unfortunately, we're at the home stretch here. We have like 7 minutes or like 6 minutes to go here.
You'll have to ask me back, Jeremiah.
Oh, absolutely. I can't wait to continue our conversation. I hope we can also maybe host or co-host a Twitter space with our friend Ariel
Certainly.
soon. But I'm really curious when we're trying to piece together, and this is a huge question to ask you when I say we don't have a lot of time, but we know about the Department of Defense. Brooke Jackson has been a guest on this program. Everyone, if you're not clear, Pfizer themselves said in a court of law that they committed fraud exactly as they were instructed to do by the Department of Defense. That was Pfizer in an American court of law. Now we also have,
and we're acquitted on that
basis, exactly, which is
right.
It's just every phase of that story just gets increasingly insane. Please go back, Bassline episode 17, my interview with Brooke Jackson. It's mind-blowing, and everyone should know about the details of what occurred there. But then, of course, we have what we've referred to here, the World Economic Forum, and all their creepy remarks, and the fact that you have Klaus Schwab sitting with multiple world leaders, including people who are purported to be enemies, sitting there like, they're his children, sitting around a campfire or something. He has Putin on one knee and Biden on the other, and he's, putting his arm around, Xi of China and the young leaders of the World Economic Forum like Trudeau and the long list of them. How do we start connecting line between how do we connect the DOD and the WEF, I guess is what I'm getting at. And what else could we add to this nexus of power?
Follow the money. Very simple. Follow the money. The DOD has been creating bioweapons, especially, by the way, racially specific bioweapons, with South Africa for at least 55 years that I know of. They're very advanced, and they have basically infinite funding to do anything they decide that they want to do. The World Economic Forum is a public face of a much, much, much deeper program that has been orchestrated for the past 140 years. In the same way that the Illuminati is middle management, I believe the World Economic Forum is a part of the theater for the control system. I see it in four segments. The Death Star that is immediately coming over the horizon to kill us. The most useful tool is the WHO, and of course the whole COVID insanity is being orchestrated by them. They're controlled by the Imperium, if you will, the United Nations. Above them is the International Monetary System, not the one that we know about, the International Bank of Settlement, but the one behind that, if you will. And above that, there seems to be a level of control that is orchestrating the entire shooting match. And at this point, the only thing that we have access to is those first two levels. Getting out of the range of the Death Star is not sufficient because the Imperium has a lot more tools. They have a backup plan at the United Nations in case they don't get the world tyranny set up through WHO that they want. And that is called Pact for the Future, which is designed to be signed on, which has been said it will be signed by the United Nations on September 24th of this year. Pact for the Future, and you can go online and read it, says, hey, listen, when there's an emergency, we should take control. Let's just declare a permanent state of global emergency. Maybe it's climate warming, maybe it's aliens from outer space, maybe it's war, maybe it's an economic crash, whatever it is. We'll just declare permanent emergency status, and we'll take control of everything forever. How about that? And the United Nations said to itself, okay, boss, we can do that, and that's what they're planning to do. So even if we get out of WHO, it's not enough. We have to get out of the entire Imperium structure, and then we have a chance to reformat the damage that they've done carefully and intentionally for all these years, in the same way that we maybe can reformat the damage that they've done carefully and intentionally with the shots and the shedding.
Right. Well, I'm glad that you ended on an optimistic note there. We don't want to fall into a sea of despair. We have to be hopeful, guys, otherwise we won't be able to win the fight. So
we have to pass the bill, the act that is currently before Congress, and that requires people simply pounding on their elected representatives, their public servants, whatever you want to call them, the Congress critters, whatever they are. We have to pound on them and force them to act on our behalf, or we will be utterly destroyed. So anybody who doesn't act, who doesn't pick this up, is colluding with the enemy.
Right. Well, on that powerful note, I want to thank you, Dr. Rima. You definitely brought the heat. We knew that you would. Looking forward to speaking with you soon. I hope we can do a Twitter space with our good friend Ariel. And
Absolutely.
Shout out to Ariel in Santana in Mexico. Thank you so much. And peace and love to everyone. Everyone have a great weekend. Please check out Dr. Rima's Substack. Please check out my new article, Operation Dog Shakes Fleas. And please continue to support this program and spread the word about what we're doing. We can make a difference, folks, but we got to pump it up here. The enemy is formidable. Have a great weekend. Thank you, everyone.